Anatoli Boukreev. Okay, before we get into this, Annapurna I, 26,545 feet, 8,091 meters. First 8,000-meter peak ever climbed back in 1950. Death to summit ratio, 32%. One climber dying for every 3 who make it back down. Not because people are careless, because the mountain, steep faces, collapsing seracs, avalanche chutes, storms with no warning, genuinely does not care.
Well, duh.
It's not the highest. It's just one of the most efficient. December 25th, 1997, Christmas Day. At around 18,700 feet on the south side, 3 climbers are fixing rope in a steep couloir, essentially a natural avalanche chute, directly beneath enormous overhanging cornices on the western wall. One of them is Anatoli Boukreev.
Приветик.
Boukreev, 39, was one of the strongest high-altitude climbers alive. Kazakhstani, Soviet-trained, famous for his no-oxygen ascents and his almost superhuman endurance. He'd written a book about it. And just a year earlier, during the catastrophic 1996 Everest disaster, the one that became the subject of books and films, he'd made multiple trips back into the storm to physically drag exhausted climbers to safety. He was, by any measure, the last person you'd expect to die on a mountain. He was on Annapurna for a bold winter attempt, alpine style, no bottled oxygen, minimal fixed ropes, with Italian Simone Moro and Russian cinematographer Dmitry Sobolev. Around midday, without warning, a massive snow cornice broke high above them and triggered an avalanche that thundered down the full length of the couloir. The slide hit all 3. Moro was swept roughly 800 feet down the slope and dumped near their Camp 1 tent, badly injured, hands ripped down to the tendons. He clawed himself out of the snow, tried to find the others, and found only debris.
Help me!
Boukreev and Sobolev had simply vanished under blocks of ice and snow the size of cars. Helicopter rescue teams made repeated attempts in the days that followed. From the air, they could see the avalanche path, but not Boukreev or Sobolev. Their bodies were never recovered. Iñaki Ochoa de Olza, May 2008, Annapurna I, South Face. Iñaki Ochoa de Olza, Iñaki to everyone who knew him, was 41, from Pamplona, Spain. A veteran of more than a dozen 8,000-meter peaks, always without supplemental oxygen, always fast and light. Exactly the kind of climber who looked at Annapurna's seldom-climbed East Ridge and thought, yeah, I want that one. He and Romanian partner Horia Colibașanu had turned back short of the summit due to dangerous conditions.
Senor Ochoa, today we are in campfire.
At around 24,300 feet, when Iñaki suddenly seized, collapsed, became semi-conscious and largely unable to move. Suspected cerebral injury combined with pulmonary edema, his brain and lungs simultaneously shutting down in the thin air. What followed was 5 days of this. 5 nights at altitude in a tent, while an improvised international rescue effort formed around him. Climbers from Romania, Switzerland, Kazakhstan, Russia, Canada, some of the strongest alpinists in the world, attempted to reach him with drugs and oxygen. Swiss legend Uli Steck made an immense solo push from base camp all the way to Camp 4 with medications. He found Iñaki too weak to move, doctors in Spain advised by radio throughout. His teammates rotated in and out of the tent, keeping him warm, talking to him during the moments when he was conscious. For 5 days, while the mountain did everything it could to stop anyone from reaching him, people tried anyway. He died on May 23rd in the tent at altitude. His body was left on the mountain. Clough, May 30th, 1970. This one is going to bother you, because the timing is just, it's almost too cruel to believe. Clough was 33, from Yorkshire, England, considered one of the finest British alpinists of his generation, Technically brilliant, consistently reliable, and by all accounts, the kind of person everyone wanted on their team. He was part of Sir Chris Bonington's 1970 British expedition attempting Annapurna I's huge, unclimbed south face. A massive, multi-week siege-style assault, one of the most ambitious undertakings in British climbing history. Weeks of fixing ropes, establishing high camps, working the face in brutal conditions. And then, on May 27th, success. Dougal Haston and Don Willans forced a route through the upper face and reached the summit. The expedition had done what it came to do. The team started clearing the mountain, packing up, coming down. Ian was descending with fellow climber Mike Thompson, passing beneath a notorious overhanging serac that the team had nicknamed the Sword of Damocles. The serac collapsed. A large section of the ice cliff broke away and triggered an avalanche that slammed directly into Ian. Thompson escaped and ran down to raise the alarm. Ian was buried where he fell. His teammates recovered his body and carried it down to base camp for burial at the foot of the face. Chris Bonington dedicated his book Annapurna South Face to him. The summit had already been reached. The ropes were being pulled. The mountain was supposed to be done with them. And then the feature, literally named the Sword of Damocles, dropped on the nicest guy on the team. Samuli Mansikka. March 2015. Annapurna I. Samuli Mansikka, 36, Finnish professional guide and high-altitude climber, known for fast solo ascents of 8,000-meter peaks, usually without supplemental oxygen. He'd joined a commercial expedition on Annapurna, using their logistical support, but climbed ahead on his own, the way people like him tend to do. He had a strong safety record and the kind of experience that makes other climbers feel better just by being on the same mountain. He summited. Solo. No oxygen. On the descent, he and a 35-year-old Nepalese guide, working with a separate team, moved down together, separated from the main group on the upper mountain. Somewhere on the descent, they fell into a hidden crevasse. Radio contact was lost. They didn't come back to camp. Search teams began looking, but altitude and terrain made it slow. It took until around March 31st, roughly a week after they went missing, for rescuers to locate both bodies inside the crevasse during an aerial and ground search. Not an avalanche, not a storm. A snow bridge, a thin, invisible layer of ice crust over a black gap in the glacier, indistinguishable from solid ground. You've just nailed a no-oxygen solo summit on one of the world's deadliest mountains. You're on the way down, and the floor opens under you. Noel Hanna, April 17th, 2023. Camp 4 on Annapurna I. Noel Hanna, 56, from Northern Ireland. 10 Everest summits, multiple Himalayan expeditions spanning decades. A man who had been to the top of the world's highest mountain 10 times and come back down every single time. He just summited Annapurna, reportedly without supplemental oxygen, descended to Camp 4. Other climbers in the tent said he seemed okay. Tired, obviously, but okay. He drank some hot soup. He lay down. He never woke up. No fall, no avalanche, no window to react. His heart, or the altitude, or the compounded weight of everything the day had demanded. Something stopped during the night. Quietly. At high camp. After a successful summit. The specific medical cause was never publicly confirmed. Just, he went to sleep and didn't wake up. His wife released a statement. She said he died with no drama, no big story. That he passed away in the Himalayas doing what he loved. I don't know. That's both a comforting and a deeply unsettling sentence when you actually sit with it. Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje. April 6th, 2025. Above Camp 2 on Annapurna I at around 18,400 feet. Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje are Nepalese climbing Sherpas working for 7 Summit Treks. Their job that day? Carry heavy oxygen cylinders and gear up the normal route to support the paying clients who will use those cylinders to summit. Not the people who get the summit photos, the people who make the summit photos possible. While they were moving through avalanche-prone slopes above Camp 2, heavily loaded, a large avalanche broke loose from higher on the face. It swept both men away. Other team members reported the accident by radio immediately. Search efforts were hampered by ongoing avalanche danger in the same zone. Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje were listed as missing and presumed dead. Expedition leader Chong Dawa Sherpa described it publicly as a terrible disaster and specifically noted it happened during routine load carrying for client summit attempts. The word routine is doing a lot of work in that sentence. There is nothing routine about repeatedly crossing the most avalanche-prone sections of one of the world's deadliest mountains, under heavy load, so that someone else can breathe comfortably on the way to their personal summit goal. The headlines that spring were about summit records on Annapurna. The Sherpas buried while carrying oxygen so those records could happen received a fraction of the coverage. This is not unusual. It happens almost every season on every major Himalayan peak. The names that get remembered tend to belong to the people who hired them. Their names were Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje. Remember them.